You are standing in a Roman forum just after sunrise. The stone beneath your feet is still cool from the night. Merchants are opening shutters along the edges of the square. A priest prepares a small altar while a magistrate waits nearby, surrounded by clerks holding wax tablets. People pass through the space without hesitation. Everyone already knows where to stand, when to pause, when to speak, and when to remain silent. In this world, loyalty is not something hidden inside a person's thoughts. It is something that must be performed where others can see it. Rituals, oaths, household discipline, and public reputation all function together as a single system that teaches people how to behave long before the state ever needs to punish them. If you find this kind of quiet examination of everyday historical systems worthwhile, consider subscribing so we can continue exploring the archive together. Prepare yourself. The societal road to obedience starts right here, right now. You move with the crowd across the stone paving of the Roman Forum as the morning light reaches the temple steps. A small altar has already been placed near the front of the gathering. A priest prepares grain and incense, while a magistrate waits nearby with attendants and record keepers. Citizens assemble without instruction. People adjust their position to see clearly. Many raise their hands as the ritual begins. A small offering is placed into the flame. The smoke rises above the square. No one pauses to debate whether they believe in the ritual. That question does not exist. Participation itself is the signal that matters. Roman public life is structured around the idea that loyalty must be visible. The system does not begin by examining personal belief. It begins by requiring public action that demonstrates alignment with the civic order. Ritual participation provides that visible action. It transforms loyalty from a private feeling into something that can be witnessed, repeated, and remembered by others. The ceremony you are observing is not unusual. It is one of many small acts that structure daily life across the city. Before assemblies meet, sacrifices may be offered. Before public announcements are made, prayers may be performed. Festivals require the presence of entire neighborhoods. Even routine civic moments can begin with ritual gestures that connect the event to divine oversight. Each act confirms the same message. A citizen who participates belongs within the system. The strength of this structure lies in its simplicity. The Roman state does not attempt to measure thoughts. It organizes behavior instead. Rituals create a shared set of actions that everyone understands. Citizens learn the gestures early. They know when to remain silent, when to raise a hand, when to bow the head, when to join a procession through the streets. Participation becomes a habit reinforced through repetition. Children watch adults perform these rituals from the time they are young. They observe family members bringing offerings to household shrines. They see neighbors gather during festivals that mark the turning of the agricultural year. They follow the movements of priests during public ceremonies. By the time they enter adulthood, the gestures of loyalty feel ordinary. This system produces compliance without requiring constant force. Attendance at civic rituals provides an opportunity for collective observation. People see who arrives early and who arrives late. They notice who performs the gestures properly and who hesitates. Presence in the square becomes a visible record of alignment with community expectations. Absence, in contrast, becomes noticeable. When a citizen repeatedly avoids participation, the absence begins to carry meaning. Questions appear quietly within the social memory of the neighborhood. A person who does not appear at festivals or sacrifices can attract suspicion even before any formal authority intervenes. This is how the Roman system begins its work. It relies on the visibility of ritual to make loyalty measurable through action. The structure extends beyond the forum. Across the city, temples host ceremonies tied to particular gods who are believed to protect different aspects of Roman life. Agricultural rituals align with planting and harvest cycles. Military victories are celebrated through processions that move through the streets and culminate in offerings. Each event gathers citizens together under the same expectations of participation. These rituals do not function as isolated moments. They form a network of repeated actions that shape public identity. A citizen learns that belonging requires visible involvement. Participation signals that a person accepts the moral framework that governs Roman society. Even when individuals privately question the meaning of a ritual, the structure still succeeds because it measures behavior rather than conviction. In this way, loyalty becomes something that can be seen. The system also reinforces hierarchy. Magistrates preside over many ceremonies, and priests guide the correct procedures. Citizens observe these figures performing rituals that link political authority with divine approval. When leaders participate visibly in religious acts, they demonstrate that the governing structure itself operates under sacred expectations. The audience does not only witness the ritual, they witness the leadership of the state engaging in it. Over time, the repetition of these public performances creates a shared rhythm across the city. Festivals return each year. Offerings are repeated before political decisions. Processions follow familiar routes through the streets. Citizens recognize the pattern and respond automatically. The result is a society where obedience appears natural because it is practiced constantly through small, ordinary acts. You watch the smoke from the altar drift above the forum as the ceremony concludes. Citizens disperse toward their daily work. The ritual occupies only a few minutes of the morning, yet its influence extends far beyond that brief moment. The system does not require constant dramatic displays of loyalty. It relies instead on steady repetition. Each act reinforces the next. Each ceremony reminds citizens that belonging within the Roman world requires participation in its visible forms of order. Loyalty is not measured by what people say they believe. Loyalty is measured by what people do in front of others. The crowd remains gathered in the forum as officials prepare for the next stage of the morning assembly. Clerks organize tablets that record upcoming votes. Messengers move between groups of magistrates. Nearby, priests stand beside the altar that was just used for sacrifice. The same square that hosted a religious offering moments ago now prepares to host a political decision. In Rome, these two activities are not separate events. They are parts of the same system. Roman governance operates within a framework where political authority and religious practice are intertwined. The same officials who manage civic administration also perform religious duties that are believed to secure divine approval for public decisions. The structure does not treat religion as a private sphere that exists outside of government. Instead, it embeds religious ritual directly into the process of governing. You can see this structure clearly in the way magistrates conduct their responsibilities. Before certain assemblies begin, sacrifices are performed to ensure that the gods favor the proceedings. Priests examine the signs produced during these rituals. If the signs are considered favorable, the assembly can continue. If they are interpreted as unfavorable, the meeting may be postponed or cancelled. Political activity therefore operates under a ritual framework. This structure gives religious authority a direct influence on public decision-making. When a magistrate performs a sacrifice before an assembly, the ritual signals that the political process itself takes place under divine observation. Citizens watching the ceremony understand that the outcome of the meeting is connected to the proper performance of religious obligations. In this environment, obedience to political authority also appears as obedience to sacred order. Priesthoods occupy a central position within this system. Many of the individuals who serve as priests are members of the political elite. They hold positions that allow them to guide ritual procedures while also participating in governance. These roles reinforce the connection between religious legitimacy and civic authority. When citizens see political leaders performing rituals alongside priests, the distinction between religious and political roles becomes less visible. The architecture of the city reinforces this connection. Temples stand near important civic spaces. Public squares host both assemblies and religious ceremonies. Processions that celebrate military victories pass by shrines and altars before reaching administrative centers. The physical layout of Rome places religious symbolism directly alongside the institutions of government. This design ensures that civic life unfolds within a landscape that constantly reminds citizens of divine oversight. When political decisions are announced near temples or accompanied by ritual gestures, they appear connected to a larger cosmic order. The Roman system therefore strengthens its authority by presenting governance as part of a sacred structure. You observe scribes recording the proceedings of the assembly while priests remain nearby to oversee ritual correctness. The same gathering that began with offerings now prepares to deliberate over civic matters. The transition feels natural to the crowd because this pattern is familiar. Citizens grow accustomed to the idea that public decisions require religious validation. When sacrifices precede political acts, they communicate that leaders are acting responsibly within the moral framework expected by the community. This reinforces trust in the governing system. Even military campaigns follow this pattern. Generals often perform rituals before leading armies into battle. Divination practices are used to interpret the will of the gods before major operations begin. Soldiers understand that their commanders operate within a structure that combines strategic planning with religious obligation. Victory is often interpreted as confirmation that the rituals were performed correctly. This interpretation strengthens the connection between success and religious discipline. When military triumphs are celebrated through processions that include sacrifices and offerings, citizens witness the fusion of political power, military achievement, and religious ceremony. The result is a system where governance appears inseparable from sacred duty. Political leaders benefit from this structure because their authority is reinforced by the belief that divine forces support the stability of Rome. Citizens who observe these rituals may come to see political obedience not only as civic responsibility but also as a form of religious alignment. This arrangement does not require constant explanation. It operates through repeated public actions that make the relationship between religion and governance visible. Every sacrifice performed before an assembly, every priest present during a civic decision, and every temple placed near a political center reinforces the idea that the Roman state functions within a sacred framework. You watch the assembly begin as officials step forward to address the gathered citizens. The earlier ritual still lingers in the memory of the crowd. The smoke from the sacrifice has faded, yet the ceremony has already done its work. It has framed the political moment within a religious order. In Rome, the act of governing is never completely separate from the act of worship. Both belong to the same system that organizes public life. You step away from the open forum and follow a narrow street into a residential quarter where tall stone walls press close to the road. A wooden door opens into a Roman household courtyard. Inside, the movement of daily life is quiet but structured. At the far end of the room stands a small shrine recessed into the wall. A family member places a small offering before the figures displayed inside the niche. Others pause briefly before continuing with their tasks. This household ritual takes only a moment, yet it reveals the first place where the Roman moral system is learned. Before a citizen participates in public ceremonies, Before oaths are sworn or assemblies attended, obedience is practiced within the structure of the household. Roman domestic life operates under a hierarchy that mirrors the authority structure of the state. At the center of this hierarchy stands the paterfamilias, the recognized head of the household. His authority organizes the behavior of everyone living under the roof. Family members, dependents, and servants operate within a structure where instruction flows downward and responsibility flows upward. The household therefore becomes a daily training environment where individuals learn how authority functions in practice. Children observe this structure from the earliest years of life. They watch decisions being made by the household head. They witness tasks being assigned. They learn the expectations associated with respect and discipline. Meals, work routines, and domestic rituals follow patterns established by authority. These patterns gradually form habits. Roman society relies on these habits to prepare citizens for participation in the wider civic order. The same individuals who learn to obey a household authority figure will later encounter magistrates, priests, and military commanders whose authority operates in similar ways. The structure of the household also includes religious elements that reinforce obedience. Within many Roman homes, the household shrine honors protective spirits connected to the family. Offerings may be placed before these figures at regular intervals. Family members participate in these acts not as spectators but as participants within the domestic ritual structure. These small ceremonies teach a simple lesson. Authority is linked to ritual responsibility. The head of the household often presides over these offerings, reinforcing the connection between leadership and religious duty. When family members observe this process, they see authority expressed through both command and ritual performance. This mirrors the structure of Roman civic life. Just as magistrates perform sacrifices before assemblies, the household head performs rituals before family gatherings. The pattern appears on a smaller scale but carries the same underlying message. Order is maintained through visible acts of responsibility. Children who grow up within this system gradually internalize the expectations associated with obedience. They learn when to speak and when to remain silent. They observe how respect is expressed through posture and behavior. They recognize that authority figures maintain the structure that allows the household to function smoothly. This training does not require formal instruction. It unfolds through observation and repetition. As young members of the household take on responsibilities, they begin to replicate the behaviors they have witnessed. Older children supervise younger siblings. Tasks are carried out according to instructions given by those above them in the domestic hierarchy. Each of these interactions reinforces the same pattern. Authority is accepted because it has always existed within the environment where the individual was raised. When these individuals later step into public spaces such as the forum, the system they encounter feels familiar. Civic officials exercise authority that resembles the authority structure of the household. Rituals performed by priests resemble the domestic rituals that occur at family shrines. The transition from private life to public participation therefore feels natural. Roman society benefits from this continuity. Instead of attempting to impose obedience on adults who have never experienced structured authority, the system raises citizens within an environment where obedience has always been present. The habits developed in childhood prepare individuals to operate within the larger civic structure. You watch the household continue its daily activities. A servant carries tools into the courtyard. A family member prepares food near a small hearth. The shrine remains quietly in place against the wall. Nothing about the scene appears dramatic, yet the lessons being transmitted within this space shape the behavior of future citizens. This household does not function only as a place of shelter. It functions as the earliest institution of moral discipline within Roman society. This practice of obedience prepares individuals for the authority structures they will encounter throughout their lives. When citizens later gather in the forum to participate in civic rituals, they already understand the patterns that guide those actions. The household has trained them to recognize authority and respond to it. In this way, the Roman moral order begins long before a citizen enters public life. It begins at home. You return to the open space of the forum where a group of men gather near a magistrate seated on a raised platform. Clerks stand nearby with wax tablets ready to record names. One by one, the men step forward and raise their hands as they prepare to swear an oath of service. The act is brief, yet the commitment carries enormous weight within Roman society. An oath transforms a spoken promise into a binding obligation that connects the individual directly to the authority of the state. Roman institutions rely heavily on these formal declarations because they create a structure where loyalty becomes both a legal and sacred commitment. The men you are watching are preparing to enter military service. Before they can join the ranks of the army, they must swear the sacramentum, an oath that binds them to obey commands and serve the interests of Rome. Once spoken, this oath establishes a relationship between the soldier and the state that extends beyond ordinary duty. Breaking such a commitment carries serious consequences. The oath invokes divine oversight as well as legal responsibility. By swearing loyalty in this way, the individual signals that failure to honor the commitment may invite both punishment from authorities and disfavor from the gods. This dual consequence strengthens the force of the promise. Roman society uses oaths in many different contexts beyond military service. Public officials swear commitments when they assume positions of authority. Witnesses in legal proceedings may swear declarations regarding the truth of their statements. Citizens entering certain agreements may seal those commitments through oath-taking ceremonies. Each instance reinforces the same structure. A spoken promise becomes a formal bond. These oaths are rarely made in private. They are performed in front of witnesses so that the commitment becomes part of the public record. When individuals swear loyalty before magistrates, soldiers, or fellow citizens, their words enter the shared memory of the community. Witnesses remember the moment. The presence of observers strengthens the oath because it creates social accountability. If a person later violates the commitment, others can recall the promise that was made. This combination of divine invocation and public observation produces a powerful mechanism of control. The system does not rely solely on written contracts or legal enforcement. It relies on the moral weight attached to sworn words. Romans treat oath-breaking as a serious offense because it threatens the trust that binds institutions together. You watch another man step forward to swear the military oath. He raises his hand while repeating the required formula. The magistrate overseeing the process listens carefully to ensure the words are spoken correctly. Clerks record the commitment so that it becomes part of the official record. The ceremony takes only a few moments, yet those few moments establish a formal relationship between the individual and the authority structure of Rome. Soldiers who swear the sacramentum become part of a disciplined hierarchy where obedience is expected at every level. The oath reminds them that their service is not simply employment. It is a sacred obligation that connects them to the fate of the state. The structure extends beyond the army. Magistrates who assume office swear that they will carry out their responsibilities faithfully. These commitments reassure citizens that leaders are bound by the same moral expectations they impose on others. When officials swear these oaths publicly, they demonstrate that authority itself operates under binding obligations. This reinforces trust within the system. Citizens observing the ceremony understand that governance is not arbitrary. Leaders have pledged themselves to uphold the duties associated with their position. If they fail to do so, their broken oath becomes a matter of public concern. The practice of oath-taking therefore strengthens the moral framework of Roman society. It ensures that promises made within the civic sphere carry consequences that extend beyond immediate enforcement. The belief that divine forces witness these commitments adds another layer of seriousness to the act. You watch the final oath of the group being sworn before the magistrate dismisses the men. They disperse across the forum, now bound by the commitments they have spoken aloud. The ceremony has ended, yet the promises remain active. From this moment forward, their relationship with the state has changed. Through the simple act of speaking an oath, they have entered a structure where loyalty is not only expected, it has been formally declared and witnessed. You move along a street where merchants have begun arranging goods outside their shops. Baskets of grain, pottery jars, and small tools appear along wooden counters. Yet several nearby stalls remain closed. Their shutters stay fastened even though the morning is well underway. A passerby pauses briefly near a public notice board where the day's designation has been posted. The reason for the closed stalls is not personal preference. The day itself has been assigned a specific character within the Roman calendar. In Rome, time is not a neutral sequence of identical days. The calendar divides the year into categories that determine what activities are permitted and which ones must wait. Some days allow political assemblies and legal proceedings. Other days are reserved for religious observance. Certain days forbid public business entirely. The structure transforms time into a regulatory system. Every citizen learns to recognize the categories that govern the calendar. Farmers plan planting and harvest activities around festivals tied to agricultural cycles. Magistrates schedule assemblies on days when civic business is permitted. Merchants adjust their trade to avoid sacred periods when public activity must pause. The calendar therefore shapes behavior long before individuals make personal decisions about how to use their time. You watch a group of citizens passing near a temple where preparations for a festival are underway. Workers decorate the entrance with garlands while priests prepare offerings inside the courtyard. People gather nearby not because they have been summoned by force, but because the calendar signals that participation is expected. The system works through predictability. Festivals return each year at the same point in the seasonal cycle. Citizens grow familiar with the rhythm of these events. Certain celebrations mark the beginning of planting seasons. Others commemorate victories, founding myths, or divine protection over the city. These recurring observances anchor public memory. When the same ceremonies appear year after year, they reinforce the continuity of Roman tradition. Citizens who attend the festivals do not simply observe religious rituals. They participate in a shared timeline that connects present behavior with ancestral practices. The calendar also regulates political activity. Magistrates must consult the designated character of a day before scheduling assemblies or judicial hearings. If a day is classified as sacred, political deliberation cannot proceed. The authority of the calendar therefore places limits on the speed and timing of government decisions. This restriction reinforces the connection between civic order and religious discipline. The structure requires leaders to acknowledge the sacred framework that surrounds political activity. When a magistrate postpones an assembly because the calendar forbids civic business, the decision signals respect for the moral system that governs Roman life. Citizens observing the postponement understand that the authority of the calendar stands above immediate convenience. You walk past a group of scribes who maintain records of the official calendar. Their tablets contain the sequence of days that determine when certain activities may occur. Priests often hold responsibility for interpreting the correct timing of festivals and rituals. Their role ensures that the calendar remains aligned with religious tradition. Through this arrangement, religious specialists maintain influence over the rhythm of civic life. Their knowledge of sacred dates allows them to guide the timing of ceremonies, sacrifices, and public observances that structure the year. The system therefore integrates time itself into the framework of moral order. Citizens experience the influence of the calendar constantly. Market days, festival days, sacred pauses, and civic assemblies all occur according to schedules that individuals cannot alter on their own. The rhythm of the city becomes predictable because everyone follows the same temporal structure. Over time, this repetition builds a shared understanding of when certain behaviors belong. People know which days invite celebration and which require restraint. They recognize when work should begin and when religious observance takes priority. The calendar becomes a silent instructor that shapes habits across the population. You notice that the closed stalls remain untouched even though customers pass by. Their owners are not absent by accident. They follow the expectations established by the calendar. Opening a business on a sacred day could be interpreted as disregard for the moral framework that protects the city. By respecting the calendar, citizens signal their alignment with the traditions that define Roman identity. The regulation of time, therefore, becomes another tool within the larger system of moral discipline. Instead of issuing constant commands, the state relies on the calendar to guide behavior automatically. Citizens simply adjust their actions according to the day. Through this structure, the Roman system transforms the passage of time into a quiet mechanism of order. You enter a crowded street where neighbors gather outside small workshops and homes. Conversations move quietly between doorways, while people carry baskets, tools, and market goods through the passage. Eyes follow each movement with casual attention. Nothing about the scene feels intrusive, yet nearly every action occurs within view of others. In Roman society, behavior rarely escapes observation. The city functions as an environment where reputation forms through constant public visibility. Citizens move through spaces where neighbors, clients, patrons, and officials regularly witness their conduct. Over time, these observations accumulate into judgments that shape a person's social standing. Reputation, therefore, becomes a powerful regulatory force. Individuals who maintain disciplined behavior earn trust within the community. Those who repeatedly disregard expected customs risk losing credibility. Because social advancement often depends on reputation, citizens pay close attention to how their actions appear to others. You notice a man greeting several neighbors as he passes. These small acknowledgements carry importance beyond simple courtesy. They demonstrate awareness of social relationships that structure Roman life. Respect shown toward elders, patrons, or officials signals that a person understands the hierarchy that governs the community. Failure to show such respect can damage reputation quickly. The Roman system relies on these public signals to reinforce moral expectations. People observe how others behave during festivals, assemblies, and daily activities. Consistent participation in rituals, careful attention to customs, and visible respect toward authority contribute to a reputation for reliability. This reputation can influence opportunities within civic life. Political careers often depend on public perception of moral character. Citizens seeking office must convince others that they uphold the traditions that protect the stability of Rome. Reputation, therefore, becomes a form of qualification. Those who maintain honorable conduct gain influence within the community. Families also protect their standing through careful attention to public behavior. Members of a household recognize that their actions reflect upon the reputation of their relatives. A single act of disrespect can damage not only the individual, but also the family name. This shared responsibility encourages discipline across generations. You pass a group of men discussing recent events in the forum. Their conversation reflects the role of collective memory within Roman society. News of honorable acts spreads quickly through informal networks of discussion. At the same time, stories of misconduct circulate with equal speed. These narratives contribute to the reputation that follows each citizen. Because reputation affects access to patronage, political support, and social trust, individuals take care to maintain visible alignment with moral expectations. The system, therefore, encourages self-regulation. Citizens monitor their own behavior because they understand that others are watching. The architecture of the city supports this observation. Streets remain active throughout the day as people move between homes, workshops, temples, and markets. Public squares host gatherings where behavior unfolds before large audiences. Even residential neighborhoods contain shared spaces where neighbors encounter one another frequently. Privacy is limited within such an environment. This does not mean that surveillance operates through formal authority alone. Instead, observation occurs through ordinary interactions between members of the community. Each citizen becomes both observer and participant within the system. The result is a network of social awareness that reinforces discipline. You pause near a market stall where a merchant carefully measures grain for a customer. Several onlookers stand nearby watching the transaction. Their presence ensures that the merchant performs the measurement honestly. Any attempt to manipulate the scale could quickly damage his reputation. In this way, public observation supports fairness in everyday exchanges. The same principle extends into larger areas of civic life. Magistrates perform duties before audiences who can judge their conduct. Priests conduct rituals in spaces where mistakes or negligence might be noticed. Military leaders return from campaigns to celebrations where their reputation becomes part of public memory. Each action contributes to the moral record of the individual. Over time, reputation becomes one of the most effective forms of informal enforcement within Roman society. Laws and punishments still exist, but many citizens regulate their behavior long before those mechanisms become necessary. They understand that reputation travels farther than any official decree. As you continue down the street, you notice how people greet one another with gestures that signal familiarity and respect. These interactions form a quiet network of observation that binds the community together. Within this network, reputation acts as a constant reminder that behavior never occurs entirely in private. The Roman moral system depends on that visibility. You arrive at a temple courtyard where several priests prepare for a formal sacrifice. Assistants arrange vessels, knives, bowls of grain, and small containers of incense on a stone table. Each object is placed carefully in a specific position. One priest reviews a written formula, while another inspects the altar and the sacrificial animal waiting nearby. Every movement follows a known sequence. In Roman religious practice, ritual precision is essential. Ceremonies are expected to follow exact procedures that have been preserved through tradition. Words must be spoken correctly. Gestures must occur in the proper order. The arrangement of tools, offerings, and participants must match established customs. The accuracy of these actions is believed to protect the relationship between Rome and its gods. A ritual performed incorrectly may fail to secure divine approval. In some cases, a mistake could even be interpreted as inviting divine displeasure. Because of this belief, Roman ceremonies emphasize careful attention to detail. You watch as the presiding priest repeats part of the ritual formula quietly before beginning. This preparation reflects the seriousness attached to correct performance. Priests often memorize long sequences of words that must be spoken without alteration. Even small variations in phrasing may be considered problematic. Assistants stand nearby ready to support the process. They hold the objects needed at each stage of the ceremony and watch for signs that something has gone wrong. If a word is missed, if a gesture occurs too early, or if the sequence breaks in any way, the ritual may need to stop. In such situations, the ceremony often begins again from the start. This repetition may seem excessive to an outside observer, yet within Roman culture it serves an important purpose. Restarting the ritual ensures that the final version follows the correct procedure without interruption. Accuracy restores confidence that the ceremony has been performed properly. You notice how carefully the participants maintain silence during certain moments of the ritual. Distractions are minimized. Observers remain respectful and attentive. The entire environment supports the concentration required to carry out the ceremony correctly. This shared discipline reinforces the authority of the ritual system. When citizens witness priests performing ceremonies with such care, they understand that these acts carry serious consequences. The precision of the ritual demonstrates that the relationship between the city and its gods must be managed responsibly. Mistakes are not treated as harmless accidents. Instead, they are addressed immediately to prevent potential harm to the community. If an omen appears unfavorable, or if a procedural error occurs, officials may repeat the sacrifice or postpone the associated civic action. The ritual therefore functions as a safeguard. Political assemblies, military campaigns, and public announcements may depend on the successful completion of these ceremonies. When a ritual must be repeated, the delay reminds citizens that the proper relationship with divine forces cannot be rushed. This reinforces the moral authority of religious procedure. The expectation of precision also strengthens the role of trained priests within Roman society. Their expertise allows them to guide ceremonies that most citizens cannot perform on their own. Knowledge of ritual formulas, gestures, and sequences becomes a specialized form of authority. Through this expertise, priests help maintain the stability of the religious system. You observe the moment when the sacrifice is finally completed without interruption. The offering burns steadily on the altar while assistants collect the remaining materials. The ceremony has followed the expected pattern from beginning to end. The participants appear satisfied because the ritual has been performed correctly. Citizens watching the process leave with confidence that the proper steps have been taken to secure divine favor. The accuracy of the ceremony reassures the community that the moral framework protecting Rome remains intact. This confidence strengthens the larger structure of Roman order. The emphasis on ritual precision also teaches citizens an important lesson about discipline. If priests must follow exact procedures to maintain harmony with the gods, ordinary people must also respect the traditions that govern daily life. Both forms of discipline support the same system. You leave the temple courtyard as the tools of the ceremony are carefully stored away. The ritual itself has lasted only a short time, yet the attention given to its accuracy reveals how seriously Roman society treats these acts. Within this system, even small errors matter, because the correct performance of ritual is believed to protect the stability of the entire community. You walk along a public road where a group of older citizens gather near a shaded portico. Younger men listen attentively while one of the elders describes how a particular ceremony should be conducted. No written statute is being read, no official decree is displayed, yet the instructions carry authority. They reflect a concept deeply embedded within Roman culture known as mos maiorum, the custom of the ancestors. This phrase refers to the inherited practices that guide Roman behavior. Instead of relying solely on written laws, Roman society often treats long-standing traditions as binding standards that shape public life. The authority of these customs comes from their connection to the past. Romans believed that the practices established by earlier generations contributed to the success and stability of the state. Preserving those practices therefore becomes a moral responsibility. When citizens follow ancestral customs, they honor the people who built the foundations of Rome. This belief gives tradition the force of law. You observe how the younger listeners pay careful attention to the elder explaining the procedure. His authority does not come from holding an official office at this moment. It comes from his familiarity with the traditions that define proper conduct. Experience becomes a form of guidance. Through conversations like this one, knowledge of tradition passes from one generation to the next. Young citizens learn how ceremonies are performed, how respect is shown to authority, and how civic duties should be carried out. These lessons ensure continuity across time. Roman leaders frequently appeal to ancestral customs when introducing new policies or defending existing practices. By presenting a decision as consistent with tradition, they strengthen its legitimacy. Citizens are more likely to accept an action that appears connected to the wisdom of earlier generations. This reliance on precedent influences many areas of Roman life. Legal interpretations often refer to historical examples. Political arguments reference the actions of respected ancestors. Even military discipline is framed as a continuation of established practices. The past therefore becomes an active presence within the present. You pass a building where records of earlier decisions are stored on tablets and scrolls. These documents preserve examples of how previous leaders addressed important situations. Magistrates may consult them when determining how to handle new challenges. The goal is not simply to imitate the past, it is to demonstrate continuity with it. Citizens observing these decisions see that the leaders of Rome operate within a framework shaped by ancestral authority. When a magistrate justifies a policy by referring to earlier precedent, the argument appeals to the collective memory of the community. Tradition becomes a stabilizing force. Because customs evolve slowly, they create predictable expectations for behavior. Citizens know how festivals should be conducted. They understand the sequence of rituals that accompany civic events. They recognize the standards that guide honorable conduct. These shared expectations reduce uncertainty. You watch a small procession move through the street, carrying symbols associated with an upcoming festival. The participants follow a route that has been used for many years. Even people who do not participate directly recognize the pattern. This familiarity strengthens social cohesion. The repeated performance of ancestral customs reminds citizens that they belong to a society with deep historical roots. Each ceremony connects present-day participants with generations that came before them. This connection encourages respect for the system itself. If a practice has endured across many lifetimes, altering it carelessly could appear reckless. Citizens therefore approach changes to tradition with caution. The system rewards those who protect established customs. Political leaders who portray themselves as guardians of ancestral tradition gain credibility among the population. By presenting their actions as faithful to the ways of earlier Romans, they align themselves with the moral authority of the past. This alignment reinforces the legitimacy of their leadership. You pause near the group of listeners as the elder finishes his explanation. The younger men nod in understanding before dispersing to their daily tasks. The conversation ends quietly, yet the knowledge shared during those moments will influence how future ceremonies are performed. Through countless interactions like this one, the customs of the ancestors continue to shape Roman behavior. In this society, tradition does more than preserve memory. It establishes the rules that guide the present. You move through a quiet section of the city where a small procession advances slowly along the street. At the front, a young man carries a small offering bowl. Behind him walks an older relative guiding the path toward a nearby temple. A few neighbors step aside respectfully as the group passes. No announcement is made, yet the meaning of the act is understood by everyone watching. The offering is an act of duty. In Roman society, that duty is captured in a single concept known as pietas. The word refers to a disciplined sense of responsibility that connects a person to three essential relationships. A Roman citizen is expected to show proper duty toward the gods, toward family, and toward the state. These obligations form a single moral framework rather than separate spheres of life. Each relationship supports the others. When a citizen honors family traditions, participates in civic rituals, and respects the authority of the state, that individual demonstrates pietas. The concept does not focus on emotional devotion. It focuses on the reliable fulfillment of obligations that maintain social order. You watch the offering placed on the temple altar as the small procession pauses briefly. The action represents one piece of a larger moral structure. By performing the ritual, the family signals respect for divine authority. At the same time, they reinforce the traditions that connect their household to the wider Roman community. The act therefore satisfies more than one duty. The strength of pietas lies in its ability to link personal behavior with public stability. When citizens fulfill obligations toward family members, they strengthen the domestic structures that prepare individuals for civic life. When they respect the gods through ritual participation, they uphold the religious practices believed to protect the city. The system creates a network of responsibilities that extend outward from the individual. Roman education reinforces this moral framework. Young citizens learn stories that celebrate figures who demonstrate loyalty to family, obedience to authority, and reverence toward divine powers. These examples shape expectations for how a responsible Roman should behave. The emphasis remains on action rather than internal belief. A person who fulfills obligations consistently earns recognition as someone who possesses pietas. That recognition influences reputation, social trust, and political opportunity. Leaders who demonstrate strong moral duty gain support because citizens view them as reliable guardians of Roman order. You observe a magistrate passing through the street as the procession disperses. He pauses briefly near the temple entrance before continuing toward the forum. His gesture signals respect for the ritual that has just occurred. Even a small acknowledgement contributes to the public demonstration of moral responsibility. Such actions are expected from individuals who hold positions of authority. Roman leaders frequently present themselves as examples of pietas. They emphasize their dedication to family traditions, religious observance, and civic duty. By displaying these qualities, they reinforce the moral standards that support their leadership. Citizens who witness these displays interpret them as signs of trustworthy governance. The concept of pietas also influences relationships between generations. Children observe the responsibilities carried out by parents and elders. They see offerings placed at household shrines, obligations fulfilled during festivals, and respect shown toward family authority. Through observation, the pattern becomes familiar. The younger generation learns that moral duty requires consistency. It is not limited to rare moments of dramatic sacrifice. Instead, it appears through repeated actions that demonstrate reliability over time. This repetition strengthens the moral discipline of the community. You continue walking through the neighborhood as ordinary activity resumes around the temple. The brief ritual has ended, yet the expectations it represents remain active within the lives of those who participated. Every citizen operates within this network of obligations. The Roman moral system relies on these connections to maintain balance between individual behavior and collective stability. When citizens fulfill their duties toward the gods, family, and state, they reinforce the structures that hold the community together. Failure to meet these responsibilities carries consequences. Neglecting family obligations can damage reputation. Ignoring civic duties can undermine trust within the community. Disrespecting religious rituals can appear as disregard for the divine protection believed to guard Rome. These risks encourage individuals to maintain disciplined conduct. Through this process, pietas becomes more than a moral ideal. It becomes a guiding principle that shapes the daily behavior of Roman citizens. You look back toward the temple as the last members of the procession disappear into the street. Their actions illustrate how the concept of pietas operates in practice. It binds personal duty to the stability of the Roman world. You return to the center of the city where the Forum stands busy with activity. Merchants conduct trade beneath shaded porticos, magistrates meet with citizens near administrative buildings, priests pass through the square preparing for another ceremony scheduled later in the day. The scene appears orderly and predictable. For Romans, that order carries meaning. Stability within the city is often interpreted as evidence that the moral system guiding Roman life is functioning correctly. When the state prospers, when harvests succeed, when political institutions operate without disruption, citizens frequently view these outcomes as confirmation that the relationship between Rome, its traditions, and its gods remains intact. Success becomes a sign of moral alignment. This interpretation strengthens confidence in the institutions that structure Roman society. If stability reflects the proper performance of rituals, obedience to authority, and respect for tradition, then maintaining those behaviors appears essential to preserving the well-being of the community. Citizens therefore associate moral discipline with collective security. You watch as officials gather near a platform where public announcements are often delivered. Their presence reflects the continuous operation of civic institutions that regulate Roman life. Assemblies, legal proceedings, and administrative decisions occur according to established procedures. Each functioning institution reinforces the perception that the system works. Periods of peace and prosperity strengthen this perception further. When trade flows smoothly through the city and military campaigns bring victory rather than defeat, leaders often attribute these outcomes to the disciplined adherence of citizens to Roman customs. Ritual participation and moral obedience appear connected to success. Public ceremonies sometimes reinforce this interpretation. Festivals celebrating military triumphs or civic achievements often include sacrifices and processions that thank the gods for their support. These celebrations remind citizens that stability results from maintaining proper relationships with divine forces. The message becomes clear. The moral system that governs Roman life protects the city when it is respected. This belief encourages continued participation in the structures that produce order. Citizens who witness stable institutions feel less incentive to challenge the traditions that sustain them. Instead, they interpret stability as proof that the inherited system remains effective. You notice a group of young citizens observing the activity of the Forum with curiosity. They watch officials conducting business and merchants managing trade. For them, the orderly movement of the city appears natural because they have grown up within a society where these patterns rarely change. Continuity reinforces trust. When the same rituals occur each year, when the same institutions govern civic life generation after generation, citizens develop confidence in the moral framework that organizes the city. The endurance of these structures appears to confirm their value. The system therefore gains strength from its own stability. Roman leaders often emphasize this connection when addressing the public. They remind citizens that the prosperity of Rome depends on maintaining the customs and disciplines inherited from earlier generations. When leaders highlight the relationship between moral conduct and civic success, they encourage the population to preserve the existing order. This reinforces loyalty to tradition. You move through the Forum as the day continues. Officials complete their duties, merchants close transactions, and priests prepare for the evening rituals that will conclude the day. The entire system appears to function smoothly within the familiar rhythm of Roman life. That rhythm is not accidental, it reflects the disciplined habits that citizens have practiced for generations. Participation in rituals, respect for authority, fulfillment of obligations, and preservation of tradition all contribute to the stability visible in the city. Romans interpret that stability as confirmation that their moral structure is working. The belief strengthens the system because it encourages citizens to maintain the behaviors that support it. When order appears to produce success, people become more willing to preserve the institutions responsible for that order. You pause for a moment at the edge of the square as the activity of the forum continues. The city functions as it has for many years, guided by traditions, rituals, and obligations that shape every aspect of public life. Within this system, stability is not simply the absence of disorder, it is seen as proof that the discipline of belief has done its work. The forum grows quieter as the afternoon light settles across the stone pavement. The movement of merchants and officials slows, and the small rituals that shape the day fade back into ordinary routine. Nothing dramatic has happened here, yet the structures you have been watching continue to guide the behavior of everyone moving through the square. This is how entire civilizations are sustained, through small systems that quietly organize belief, duty, and order. If you find value in examining these quiet structures of the past, consider returning to the archive and subscribing so we can continue exploring them together.